Just in a nutshell, in 2008 we started with Arts on Main, which was our flagship development. We saw the net effect of something like that in this area, and we started slowly buying buildings. In 2010 we went up to 7 buildings, so we had 7 buildings within our portfolio, and we were developing them with a mixed-use component, which is how we develop, so a mixture of residential, commercial, retail, industrial. And we're now in 2013 and we're sitting on 35 buildings. So in a couple of years' time, we'll arguably be one of the biggest private sector developments of a neighbourhood in the world. Well, Joburg City is a wealth of old buildings, and it has a history of being the business epicenter and then having a mass exodus in the early 90s, leaving a lot of the buildings abandoned and dilapidated and underutilized. And we've just seen those buildings as an opportunity to show the true potential of the city, to try and turn those buildings into a space that's livable and workable, and to create a viable investment option for local and foreign investors.
So we're inside the new residential components of a development called Mode. On that side is the Museum of African Design, and on this other side of us to the north is Artisan Loft, where we've just about to complete 44 apartments. So this is our 8th development, and it's primarily residential spaces, but also some workspace and museum space. So inside the museum space over there, we're installing a major concrete slab that's going to allow for more parking spaces below the museum. And then within the residential spaces there and here, we're also casting some new mezzanine slabs to increase the footprints of the residential spaces. When we found the building, it was very typical 1950s industrial building, lots of face brick, lots of big steel beams, extremely high volume ceilings. So what we've tried to do, like we do in all of our developments, is retain the industrial history of the building and try and keep as much of the original building materials as possible. And then when we add materials, we add new materials that contrast with the old.
These buildings were built in an era where they were built properly, so the foundations of these buildings are incredibly strong, and all the infrastructure in the building, some of the infrastructure might be gutted, but most of it is reusable on certain levels, and then it's a very easy feat to just reticulate the plumbing and the electrical in most of the buildings. So it's not a difficult task.
I think changing the use within buildings has a dramatic effect on the dynamic of a neighborhood. We've gone into old industrial areas that are largely vacant with some industrial space, and we've converted that into residential space and workspace and retail space. So we've seen the neighborhood transform completely, and it's largely due to the construction and development projects that we've undertaken.
I think that the impact that it has on all of Joburg is that it's bringing people back into a city that people once thought was a lost cause. It's creating viable investment options, and it's creating a space for young professionals and elderly to live, work, network, collaborate, whereas the suburbs don't do that. Suburbs, you've got people who live in their houses for 10, 20, 50 years. They don't even know their neighbours, and they don't know what their neighbours are about. Here we're creating an interdisciplinary environment where you can step out of your apartment into the boxing gym, step out of your apartment into a workspace with boardroom facilities, step out of your office and into a nightclub, step out of your office and buy yourself a garment for the evening. So it's creating an all-encompassing ecosystem for people to move back into.